Nigeria is the third most religious country in Africa. This is according to the Pew Research Center. But our religiosity somehow has not translated into making us better people if we are judged based on our behavior and the quality of the country we have built. On the Global Corruption Index, which measures perception of corruption in the public sector, we rank among the 20 most corrupt nations in Africa, suggesting that a substantial number of our public office holders are thought to indulge in the very unreligious behavior known as theft. Now, the two dominant religions in Nigeria are Christianity and Islam. Both forbid murder, and yet sectarian violence flares up regularly in this country, leading to killings, injury, and the destruction of valuable property. Overall, it does not appear that our religions are making us into better people or helping us to build a better society. On today's edition of The Core, we ask why this is the case and examine if this can be turned around so that religion becomes a force for developing good citizens, decent public office holders, and a better Nigeria. First, here's an Islamic cleric on the values that he says underpin all religions. To discuss the issue of religion and nation building, I'm joined by Father Atta Burkindo, a practicing Catholic priest and also a director of the Kuka Center. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Thank you.
Also with us is Mr. Nuruddin Asunogi, the Vice President of the Muslim Dawah Coordinating Council of Nigeria, Chairman of the Nigerian Supreme Council of Islamic Affairs for Edo State, and also a public affairs analyst with the University of Benin. Thank you, sir, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
We also have Mr. Fayemi Fakayodi, a researcher, cultural consultant, and also a priest of Ifa, a sect of African traditional religion. Thank you, sir, for coming.
You're welcome.
Finally, we have Mr. Chude Jidonwo, founder of Joy Inc., an organization focused on mainstreaming research and evidence on ways that humans can flourish with a view to influencing and building a new generation of Africans who will focus on happiness for the majority. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
We also have a distinguished studio audience who will join the conversation as we progress. Many of them are scholars and members of religious institutions in Nigeria. Those of you at home can also take part in this conversation by sending your comments using the channel's Twitter handle at Channels TV or my own personal Twitter handle at Kadria Ahmed. Please use the hashtag NGTheCore so that we will be able to pick your comments. Now, I'm going to start with the sort of less obvious religious person in this crowd. And Chude, that is you. We heard the cleric there talking about all these amazing values that he says the two major religions that we practice, Christianity and Islam, basically push. But somehow you kind of listen to him and you think that he's been a bit idealistic because it's totally at odds with what obtains in reality in this country. So why have our lives not improved in tandem with this growth that we see in what I call religiosity?
Well, I'm a bit worried that you're starting with me. Because I did feel like, yes, that the things that the cleric, the respected cleric, mentioned that the religious books stress, a bit of an exaggeration. You know, I'm a Christian, I'm a practicing Christian. But I do know that even our religions are complex institutions with complex documents that say a number of things. And many people who look into these documents can come out of them with different interpretations. So if we look to religion as the primary driver for nation building or good governance, we will always miss it because you can find what you are looking for in these religious books. Talk about the two topics.
Whether they're positive or negative.
Whether they're positive or negative, you'll find justifications for war, you'll find justifications for theft, you'll find justifications for intolerance, but you also find justifications for peace, and you'll find justifications for love. So I do not think that those are primarily the drivers of nation building. I think that they are important texts, but they are not going to help us build nations.
Mr. Asunogi?
Well, I think the point he has made, thank you for having me on your platform. The point the cleric made are solid points. There are two dimensions about us humans. What is of significance is the moral dimension of our human personality. until and unless we are able to drape ourselves, so to speak, in the costume of morality, we continually will swim in the ocean of putridity. That basically was what religion was supposed to address. If you take the Islamic religion, for example, there's an appreciation that we were projected into a world that was studiously made malleable. Why is the word so? Because you needed the malleability of a word for you being a moral agent to acquire meaning. And so if you are not going to ultimately become that moral agent, which will form the basis of your evaluation when you relate with God ultimately, then you miss the point.
But the point Chude was trying to make was actually there are inherent contradictions within religion that make it easy for practitioners to, if you like, almost is like a pick and mix kind of thing, decide I can do this and I cannot do that. So suggesting that there's an inherent weakness.
No, there is no weakness. There's no weakness. It will depend on the depth of the understanding of the individual. There will be no weakness, and in fact, there is no weakness. What we have seen over time is that the human being is a very complex mind. It's like you have any document whatsoever. If you choose to become mischievous, the document is not the source of the mischief. It is what is inherent in that individual. And that basically is what religion was supposed to address.
Okay. I want to just bring in the Reverend Father. Does he speak for you when he talks about the fact that essentially he's saying we are the problem and religion was supposed to help us deal with that problem? But Chude seems to be suggesting that actually if we want to be fair to religion, we have to understand that religion has contradictions in it. And so it is easy for flawed people to take what they can out of it.
My point here is that in every institution there are deviants, whether it's politics, it's economy, and so banking sector, and so also is religion.
Now the issue is whether that deviance is rooted in the religion itself or it is rooted in man.
And that is the point I'm trying to make. For example, I went to the seminary for 9 years. I went overseas. There's no organized structure within the Catholic Church that deliberately teaches you corruption, deliberately teaches you to be bad. Throughout, you are taught to be good. But along the way, you become an adult, you have the opportunity to make choices. So sometimes those choices actually becomes what they become. But we have to make a distinction also between nation building and simply building a state, constructing roads, providing water. But building a nation is about building communities of people living together in tolerance and coexistence. To some extent, I could agree with him. Religion may not completely play every role, but I think religion has a role to play. And so picking out the deviant behavior of a single religious person and painting an entire religious institution as being bad, it means that we may not even go to banks because we have corrupt bankers.
Okay, and in a short while we'll talk about, the sort of impact religion has had and maybe why we were having this conversation. But I want to bring in our other panelists because you're kind of slightly different in the sense that you're a minority here. The two major religions in Nigeria, even though you are probably practicing one of the oldest, is Islam and Christianity. Is the religion of Ifa drastically different from the way it addresses some of these issues? And how do you see this particular matter that we're talking about?
Thank you very much. When we are talking about social vices in our society, social vices are as old as the world itself. And that is why in every religion, social vices are not something that are strange because you find them in the scripture. In the Holy Quran of the Muslim, they will find something like that as well as in the Bible. And in Ifa, which is the scripture of our traditional religion, we can see instances of deviant behaviors and so other social vices. But what we see is that in the scripture, all these social devices, they were recorded there because people, not only that it is nowadays that people are corrupt or they are into all these things, they have been like that. And the most important thing is for the religion to build the character of people.
Okay, so let me ask you, from the point of view of someone practicing traditional, religion versus what I call the Abrahamic religions, do you think there's a connection between the fact that this, what many call foreign religions, have come and taken root here, and the difficulties we are having as a people, and the fact that we've moved away from the religion of our ancestors? Or you think they're not related at all?
One, I can say the answer to that is yes and no, because we could not say it's only with the introduction of foreign religions that we have social vices. They have been there before the introduction of foreign religions. But the only difference is that people are always afraid of the repercussion in those days, because they will tell you, if you steal, this is the repercussion, even when people don't know. Because nowadays we only depend on the laws and enforcement agent, that when you steal and you are caught, you will be charged and this and that. And many people, they believe they can do it with impunity. But in those days, people know that even when you steal and nobody was there to see you, the repercussion will surely come. And that is the relevance of what we refer to as a war, which is taboo, because everything is all about taboo.
Okay, let me come back to Mr. Asunoge here. The same question, therefore, I'm coming back to that I asked Chude. If what you believe is that religion was brought to sort of improve us, because innately we are the ones with problems, why have we not seen a direct correlation with the growth of religion in Nigeria and basically us becoming better people, having better people in positions of authority, looking after each other and doing all the things that these religions teach us to do?
When you talk about growth of religion, Islam talks about the issue of duplicity, talks about knavery. If I got a loaf of bread, put it in water, moments later I pick it, it would have grown. Has it grown in quality? Has it grown in usefulness? The answer, of course, will be no. So it will mean the depth of one's involvement. Because if you looked at the prophet and those who operated shortly after him, they met a society that obviously had cascaded, a society that was in serious crisis. And religion came manumitting these persons who had before them been manacled. So if I do not, for example, if I have an attitude of pretense, I could pick a document and pretend to be reading that document. I won't get that. The problem we have is when what you have found over time is the projection of religion for the gratification of ends that are hoggish, ends that are selfish, and that kind of stuff. So it is not, and that explains why in copious passages of the Quran, you find Allah describing such persons as those who are hypocrites. So you won't get the quality you ordinarily would have gotten from what is genuine if you were doing a comparison with what is fake.
So Chude, what he's essentially saying is this religiosity that we see, it's not sincere. And that is really the problem, because people are not fully practicing, they are just pretending, essentially.
Well, I mean, you can't go into the hearts of people to know whether they are sincere or not. What worries me is this, since I have been Nigerian, this intense necessity to tie nation building to religion. The two most powerful nations in the world in terms of economics, in terms of, I think, the military, would be China and the United States. China is not a religious country by any measure. And the fastest growing religion in America, according to Pew Research, is no religion. And none of that has affected the capacity of these countries to be high on human development indexes. I think that, the idea that religion was formed to curb social vices is itself not rooted in history. Religion was formed because man was trying to understand the nature of ourselves. What is the world? Why are we here? Is there something outside of here? Where are we going after this? And those are important questions. And
essential questions.
They're essential questions, and religion helps us navigate those questions. But democracy, other institutions have tried to answer these questions. Communism has tried to answer these questions. Socialism has tried to answer these questions. Religion doesn't own a special place in helping human beings navigate how to live our lives with more tolerance, to generate more prosperity. Both religious nations and irreligious nations, if there's such a word, have managed fine to develop. The things that make nations grow are independent of religion.
But part of the reason we're having this conversation appears to be that increasingly religion is taking center stage in our lives and across, both
Absolutely.
religions.
So I understand why the conversation is important. It's a crucial conversation. And I think it was in Channel Studios that the Minister of Power, Governor Fashola, said, look, he understands that, but it's almost like religion is now used as a pretext to dodge the difficult questions. So it's like the conversation about religion and nation building should we even be having religion play a part in nation building, or should it be doing its own thing?
And that is the
while
question.
Governance is doing its own thing.
And that's the question I actually want to ask the father.
Yes, I mean, let us not forget history at all. It's not even true that in Europe, in America, religion didn't play a role making America to be what it has become. That's why they call it God's own country in the first place. I mean, even the conversions we can see in China, one of the reasons religion didn't grow in China is partly because of also the dictatorship and literally the suppression that we see with communism and with others, and how we have seen even the collapse of communism in Europe. Now, coming back to Nigeria, of course, we have, for example, the traditional forms of education, later on Islamic forms of education, and missionary education. For me, particularly in southern Adamawa, my village, if not for missionary education, I don't think I'll even have the confidence to sit here to talk. So I think that religion has a role to play in nation building, depending on how we define nation building, how we define state building, particularly in terms of education, Western education in terms of even the moral aspect that he actually, spoke about. A lot of our educated politicians today in this country, back in the 60s and early 70s, benefited from free missionary education. Missionaries who left Europe and came here and constructed free schools, free hospitals, and everything was happening well.
And historically that might be correct, but we are talking about contemporary Nigeria and what is happening, today in Nigeria with, a place like Lagos is believed to have over 8,000 churches and mosques. Every day you get little people sending you WhatsApp groups. They want to build a mosque, they want to build a church, and people are saying we're not seeing the same commensurate effort being put into things that have practical applications on people's lives, schools, hospitals.
But Kadaria, that is not true. I think we need to interrogate that very properly.
Okay,
for
and
example,
let us interrogate it after I have taken a very quick break.
Okay, thanks.
Do join us. Don't go away. Welcome back. You are watching The Q, and we are The Core, and we are talking about religion in nation building. I'd like to involve members of the audience, and maybe if we could have the mic up front here, start with the Imam and then the Reverend Father. We've been talking about the role of religion and whether actually in the context of nation building, religion should play a part, or we should look to religion to play a part in nation building. What are your thoughts? And please do introduce yourself, sir. Do introduce yourself.
My name is Imam Fuad Adeyemi. I'm the National Chief Imam of Al-Habibiyah. I think we should understand what is called religion and understand what is called growth and development. I think this is why we are missing it. You said religious growth in Nigeria now. No, we have passed the peak of religious growth in Nigeria. That was around 1974 to 75, 76. That was the peak. When the charlatans now see that there is honor, there are money, there are influences in religion, then they began to open what they call religious hawking. It is that hawking people now define or see as development. I'm surprised when somebody is saying that you can pick what is wrong and what is right from religion. No, because there are things that are wrong and are right. The essence of religion is now to encourage those things that are right and stop those things that are wrong. If you now pick from what is right. You see some people doing something, it's either those people that you are seeing that are not doing the right thing, they're actually religious hawkers. Okay. If you want to understand exactly, you look at the history, like somebody was saying, is it a bishop that was saying, if you look at the history of religion, you discover that it has actually been religion that developed not just our nation, the entire world.
Okay, let's ask the Reverend Father for his thoughts, because you raised an important issue I want to pick on. Yes.
My name is Reverend Father Cornelius Omonokwa. I'm the Executive Secretary of the Nigeria Interreligious Council, NIREC, and also the Secretary General of the West Africa Interreligious Council. The topic we are discussing is something that is really very important. For example, NIREC has taken a team, Religion and Civil Authorities in Dialogue for Nation Building. And this is a theme we hope to discuss very seriously in our next NIREC meeting on the 12th of this month, December. Now, when we want to talk about religion, we should not forget that it is human beings that practice religion. And these human beings have a lot of inheritance. What I call inheritance here is that we grow up in different places. We are influenced by environment. We are influenced by culture, the way we grew up. And those of you who are science inclined, you know, I would want to think that sometimes when we want to talk about the way we are, somehow, let us ask ourselves, what are the things affecting this person? Why is it behaving in a particular manner psychologically?
All right, I'm coming
not just
back,
about religion.
Yeah, let me come back to the panel. Chidi, we're getting back again to the issue of human fallibility, essentially. But the question is this: if we agree to the analysis that Imam Fuad made, which is that we had reached the peak of religion and what we have now are charlatans, is the answer to start to regulate religious bodies and the practice of religion in Nigeria? Is that where we should be going? And would people, you know, this panel be sort of happy to have that happen? Maybe if we talk and then come back to...
Well, those are two, yeah, I think these are two questions. The first question that religion reached its peak in the 60s and 70s, I really take issue with first, because Nigeria has seen corruption from the day we were declared as a nation. If you look at the trend lines on every indices from corruption, we had scandals about corruption from when we got independence. There was no one time when we suddenly...
There was no golden age.
There was no golden age, not from independence till now. The golden ages only exist in comparison with today. So if you compare 2019 with 1999, or you compare 1999 with 1979, then those were golden ages. Okay. That's what. On the second hand, religion does need... religion is regulated by the CAC. There has been legislation that has been proposed, so it has been. But if it is going to make a special case for its own utility, then there needs to be special regulation for it. We need to begin... When we come to that, we all panic and we all go back. Oh, no, let's not touch it, you know? And I think that's mostly because it's people who don't have religion who usually demand for regulation of religion. I think that there are many of us, people like me, who went to church before coming here this evening, who believe in God, believe strongly in religion, but who say it needs greater accountability because it gets so much special pleading. It gets so many allowances.
Okay,
it
so
needs to be closely looked at.
Would that be something that you would think is a good thing to do? Special accountability for religion, precisely because of the hypocrites you've talked about, the charlatans that have taken advantage, and if you like, to go by your explanation, misusing it?
Well, yes, I would say yes to regulation. But the question is, who regulates what? Who does the regulation? And how
so maybe what we should start by asking what regulation looks like in your view.
Exactly. Again, who buffers it? You see, in communities or clients where he had spoken about, where you have development not tied to people who are deeply religious, that becomes suspect. In the United States of America, if your moral robustness was doubted, if your moral sanity was doubted, you don't aspire to a position of leadership. What is that speaking to?
But not anymore. Not with
not
Trump in
Donald
office,
Trump.
right?
Even Barack Obama.
Fine,
He never went to church in 4 years.
No,
as president.
even if we were to query that, when you talk about the development of America, on what did they develop? Money stolen from Africa, which they have kept, ditto for whatever. So these are moral issues. So it's like you talking about the richest man in Nigeria today, who is super rich. How much integrity does the wealth of that person have? Must I celebrate the money because he's rich when it is devoid of integrity?
Okay, I'm trying hard to understand the point you're making. I'm getting a little bit lost because what we were trying to address is the issue of whether we need to regulate or not, and what if we should, what does it look like? Because you said in principle...
Yes, in principle, yes. But who does the regulation?
Yeah, well, let's start by asking you, what does regulation that functions, that works for you looks like?
The regulation is that until and unless an individual is able to demonstrate capacity for objectifying what was ordinarily subjective by the way of the conduct of that individual in a way that is beneficial to society, in a way that mirrors a sense of duty as opposed to interest. Because what religion throws up is that, yes, there is a dichotomy between what you refer to as duty and interest. What people have always pursued, even in the name of religion, is the promotion of interest. What do I gain? Okay. Not what is the duty to be executed, regardless of whether I'm a beneficiary ultimately. Because
okay, let me bring in the traditional religious person who worships slightly different from the way that you do. From your point of view, what should we be looking to do with religion? And I'm not talking about your religion alone, but sort of all the major religions in particular.
Thank you. What I see with religion in Nigeria is like almost everybody is trying to shy away from the truth when we are talking about religion. And we have made religion...
And the truth is?
The truth is that we should always be strict with the religious, the regulations in the religion and the verdicts and whatever we expect from the religion. But what people are doing is that they do something that will be favorable to them, and anything that we know that will be the opposite, they will dodge it. For instance, now, when we are saying that religion cannot contribute anything to the nation building, I don't agree with that. Because if religion can build individuals with their good morality, with that, the country will be better for that. But the problem with Nigeria is this. Even when we want to take our oath of office, you see, when people are taking oath of office, they say, I promise I will do this, I will do that. And by the time they will come to the conclusion, they say, so help me God.
Okay.
If at all we want to take oath, there should be something like, if I do otherwise, if it is a Muslim, let Allah punish me. If it is a Christian, let the curse in the Bible be on me. Because in the traditional religion, that is what we believe in. This is what I will do. And if I do otherwise, let Ogun kill me. But in Nigeria, people are trying to shy away from the truth.
Let me quickly bring in the Reverend Father, because I want to go back to the audience. We're talking regulate, not to regulate. If we're regulating, what does it look like? Or let me throw a third one. Should we just totally refuse to do religion and make it an entirely personal affair and turn Nigeria into a completely secular state and tell people to worship God privately, personally, and to not allow it into the public life?
No, I think that the Constitution guarantees the freedom of religion for people to express that. Even if you want to worship mountain, you are free to do that. My personal opinion is not about regulation.
I wasn't suggesting that you stop people from worshipping.
Absolutely.
That was not what I said.
Okay, I understand. So I think we have enough laws in this country. If laws can strictly be implemented and the culture of impunity can be eliminated, I think we will go a long way. The reason why people go back to the wombs of their religion, of their ethnic group, is simply because Nigerian laws are not working, are not being implemented, are not being taken seriously. So whatever new regulation you are going to bring within the context of religion, in my opinion, is already captured in different acts and different constitutions and different legal frameworks that are existing. The question is, to what extent can we actually implement these constitutional laws and completely eradicate the culture of impunity, so that no individual, whoever you are above the law. A pastor, a priest like me, any religious leader, you break the law, you are simply treated as a Nigerian citizen.
Okay, let me ask members of the audience. There's a young lady, Walidat. Yes, please give her the mic. We'll come back to the front, but let me just hear the voice. We have a few young students in here, and I'd like to give them an opportunity. Yes.
My name is Walidat Ambazao. I'm a student of Bayes University. I'm studying mass communication. I think I agree with what the traditional leader says. And I also think that people should follow their religion, their religion rules. And again, another thing that is contributing to the problem we're having is a lot of us are not actually obeying the rules. Like religion can also play its role when individuals also obey the rules.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alochu? Yeah, over there. Please. Yeah. And then from her, we'll go to the gentleman at the back.
Good evening. My name is Aloch Adia, and
okay, actually, because your camera has problems, I'm going to move the mic to somebody else in front while they sort that out. I apologize for the technical problem. Okay? So, yes, sir. There's a gentleman up front here. Can you pass the mic down, please? Yes. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. You and then the gentleman. Okay, you can start with him. That's fine. Okay. And please make it short. We're running.
Standing or I sit
down? No, please, you sit down.
Good evening, the people on the other side, and to the audience. My name is Halima Jubri. I'm a media practitioner and a gender activist. There is a vacuum here because the Corporate Affairs Commission that registers them. There's a trustee department in Corporate Affairs Commission. I think you should have invited one of them, a registrar there or whoever, to come and give us clarification on the trustee memoranda or articles of association, because I worked in CAC before. There used to be a Cap C of the Trustee Act that regulates religious organization. Whether they have changed it or they amended it, I do not know.
Do you suspect something has happened to it based on what you're seeing?
Yes, because you find out that is where the regulation should have started from, because CAC is an organ of the government. And regulation for a country, it is the government that makes the guidelines.
What you seem to
be
implying is that you think regulation is needed, but you're not seeing evidence that it is happening.
Yes, regulation is needed because the proliferation is on the increase every day, and that has not molded character.
Okay.
If the regulation is carried out and is strict, the proliferation will reduce.
Okay.
And more character will be molded.
The gentleman next to her, while he's getting that mic, Karl Marx did say that religion is an opium of the masses. There are people who've argued that actually, as Nigeria has become poorer, we have seen a proliferation of religion. So just the panel to bear that in mind while we listen to gentlemen. So when we come back to have that conversation. Yes,
My name is Abubakar Sadiq. I'm a columnist and an Islamic scholar. I would address the gentleman in brown because we have a Muslim, a Christian, and the follower of tradition, religion. Yeah, he is a Christian, but I mean no insult. He appears to support the part that is not religion. I mean, from all the examples that he has cited. I have a problem with his position on man getting what he wants from the scriptures. If he wants to steal, he can get textual proof on how he should steal. Really, I have a problem with that. I think God's emissaries were to convey his messages to the people. Whoever wants will accept, whoever does not want will not accept, just like the priests and the imams are doing today. Because some people are stealing, because people are killing, it doesn't mean that the scripture teaches what they are doing. But lastly, Kadiria, lastly, this panel or discussion, I mean, could as well just close. Because if what he says, that it is to be irreligious is synonymous to advancement and infrastructural development, then we can just close and say, okay, goodbye, everybody. Okay, because so if Nigeria would do that, then no investor will come in, because we will keep on killing ourselves in the name of religion, creating chaos, and no investor will bring his money into this country.
Okay, sir. I have to just throw a few things here. So there's a difference between having a theological discussion about sort of what the scriptures say and trying to address the practicalities of what life is practically for Nigerians who basically have not seen much of an improvement, despite the fact we have more mosques, we have more churches. Now, we've had some of the panel try to explain that the reason they think that's happening is because those who are opening these churches are not necessarily steeped in religion, the real religion, or the real scripture. But what I'd like us to begin to address is to say, okay, if this is the issues, these are the issues that how do we get, you're the religious people, how do we get religion to begin to make a difference? If you disagree with Chude that the answer does not lie in religion, how do we make religion begin to make a difference? He's giving us a few practical...
But can I say something?
Yes.
First of all, religion and religious leaders cannot replace the government. The government has responsibility towards its citizens. If you take, for example, the Boko Haram...
How can we get religion to influence the leaders?
Absolutely.
Because there's a cozying up that seems to happen in Nigeria. A lot of religious leaders are very close to people who actually wield political power. So how do we marry the two?
First of all, I do not know what they discuss when they are close to these leaders, but I suspect, absolutely, I suspect that they are able to advise, they are able to admonish, and they are able to. But you are also talking about religious leaders who probably belong to the elite. There are other religious leaders living in local communities, attending to the problems of IDPs,
okay. And let's talk about those. We'll talk about those communities and the work that religion is doing when we come back from this short break. Don't go away. Welcome back. You are watching The Core, and we're talking about the role of religion in nation building. I want to take a comment from Twitter very quickly. Tolu Justice says, how do we explain those who steal public funds and take them to religious houses? It's a valid question, and we'll grapple with it, I think, a little bit later. But you were talking to us about outside, sort of, if you like, national visible religious leaders that we all know. People that you say are religious and are doing amazing work in their communities.
I'll give you an example. At the Kuka Center, we just published a documentary on Zamfara, Kizara precisely, when the incident happened. One of the victims was thanking Bishop Kuka because literally Bishop Kuka collected tons of relief materials from all over his diocese and literally went to donate and to assist. And 90% of people who belong to that community are actually Muslims. The same thing you find in Yola Diocese, for example, with Catholic Bishop Stephen. Literally, his IDP camp became a center. They were not only providing trauma counseling, they were rebuilding schools. So sometimes the media may not get this. Sometimes it is not in the public domain. And they are doing quite a lot. And I think that even some imams, some pastors, some priests have actually been slaughtered trying to counter the extremism of very violent groups in a way and manner that the government has not done. So I think some credit should actually be given for the efforts that some people are making.
If I could bring in Mr. Asunugi, yes. Part of the problem that sometimes people have is that religion doesn't seem to be able to police itself. So going back to an issue that Chude raised about the fact that a lot of the criticism of religion tends to come from non-believers, and so nobody takes it. So for example, you all talk about the fact that there are charlatans in the business. We talk about extremism, but we don't see religious leaders at the forefront of head-on confronting these issues which are causing the problems that we are having. Why is that?
Well, a number of those you refer to as religious leaders, these may be titles that are hollow. And again, these are persons who are appointees of those you want them to criticize. You look at a traditional ruler who could be removed by the local government chairman and he doubles as a religious leader. What does he say? We are not immune to the, we are not unaware of the fact of what is playing out somewhere. People had to go to court and order a bill being reintroduced to the House of Assembly. These are ways by which these persons have been emasculated. And so it becomes the challenge. And when we talk about the issue of religion, those who peculate resources that would have developed state do not claim any particular religion, whether they are governors, whether they are whatever. And so
many do. We see them in the mosques and in the churches.
Of course, when they are in the mosques or church because those persons who own this place are completely helpless. Otherwise,
so what do we do? So I'm now asking for practical...
Practical, whatever is obviously what is being done. I'll tell you most frankly. But for what the sincere religious people are doing, this country would have since gone up in conflagration. Because here is a society where you have stupendous wealth, and yet people navigate the even ocean of impecuniosity, if not outright penury. And yet you still have some relative sanity. If people were not doing all of this that they were doing, we'll have problems. The unfortunate thing, again, is that people are hamstrung. You do not like a particular leader. He does not need you to like him to win an election. Because your liking or not liking him will ultimately not going to count.
Okay, so let me ask the three of you a very quick question before I go to Chude. Religious leaders tend to be very influential. They seem to be able to get people into the mosques, into the churches. Why have we not seen, like we've seen in places like in Latin America, either the church or the mosque lead a real concerted campaign to get their their followers to begin to hold leaders accountable? Because we've seen places where religion has been at the forefront of challenging political leaders that are failing their communities. What is the problem? Why is that not happening here?
I think that they do. People like Bishop Kuka, Bishop Onaikan, they have been very vocal actually in this country. But just like the point you made, if a politician steals money and then on Friday goes to the mosque, how do you blame an imam on that mosque? Why not blame the government for not arresting this man who stole the money? So I think we should go back to the root, because the religious leader has no executive, no judicial or legislative powers. All he has is a moral power. So let us take the person who is responsible to actually take action.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you. That's thing we believe that is one of the things that religious leaders should be doing. But unfortunately in Nigeria, maybe because they know that the traditional religion is potent enough to do something like that, they are trying to relegate traditional religion. The people in government, they don't want to reckon with traditional religion. They don't give recognition to traditional religion. Even the religious leaders, like the Inter-Religious Council they have in Nigeria, they will not include members of traditional religion.
On a serious, we're laughing, but is it not true that we've seen instances where people have gone to shrines and have sworn, are more likely to actually, for some reason, respect those oaths that they've taken than, you know, standing in church? So we are laughing, but he seems to be making a strong point. No?
No, absolutely. He is making a very, very strong point. I mean, as Africans, people navigate between mosque, church, and the traditional rulers. But now it's left for the government to see how they can bring the traditional religion really. But I think that even people within traditional religion probably need to organize themselves much more strongly.
We have just a few minutes to go, and so I'd like to sort of wrap this up, and I'd start with him. What are your final thoughts on what we've been discussing?
My thought is that nation building is something that religion can contribute to. The only thing we need to do is to make sure that we practice our religion the way it is laid down by the prophet of the religion. Especially to the traditionalists, I will advise that we follow what Orunmila said in Ifa, that we should always be honest and faithful. That is, he who is honest and faithful will be favored by Olodumare.
Sir?
I think the religion has a role, a very big role in nation building. We just need to emphasize the secular nature of the Nigerian state and ensure really that the state laws are really applied and no one is above the law.
Sir?
Religion drifts us in the costume of immaculateness, and that is what every society requires to grow and develop. Development is not about infrastructure alone, but living as sane human beings.
Judy, you have the second to the final word with this.
Oh, God. The first thing is, we say that religious leaders have contributed a lot to nation building. When the data, and there has been 2 church reports, for instance, published this year about social responsibility, banks have done more in donating to social responsibility efforts than churches. That's what the data shows. And I dare say other institutionalized religion, I talk about Christianity because I'm a Christian. If churches want to argue with that, they should publish their reports, financial reports, the same way that banks and other corporates do.
Take this money.
No. We cannot measure the impact, social impact of institutions if they don't open themselves up to transparency. That's one of the things we need to do in terms of regulation. That's one.
Right.
But finally, it's important to say this, that there's a pretense that everybody in Christianity believes the same thing and everybody in Islam believes the same thing. It's not so. And so when we pretend that when we look at our texts, we all see the same things and we all do the same things, we will continue to run around in circles because we don't want to admit.
And so your
That
solution
complexity is to separate religion, just the way we separate other institutions from nation building, and make sure that, like any other institution, it's as accountable to society as we make banking, business, or NGOs accountable.
Okay, unfortunately, we have run out of time and have to leave it here. My gratitude to my panel and also the studio audience, as well as everyone who's contributed to making the core what it is. And I'm saying thank you not just for this edition, but for each and every edition of the show, which has been taking place now for a little over 2 years, because we are taking a break and will not be on air until the middle of next year. My sincere gratitude to our partners, Channels Television, and all others, including the MacArthur Foundation, Ford Foundation, Plaque, Foster, CDD, and many others who have supported this program over the last few years. On behalf of Channel Television and Daria Media, I'm Kadria Ahmed, wishing you a very good evening and a Happy New Year in advance.